So today, we're going to break down this incredible story of one woman's fight against a system that was corrupt to its absolute core. It's a battle that kicks off on the side of a highway and just explodes into an all-out war, pitting the skills of a single Delta Force commander against an entire institution built on lies.
All right, let's dive right in. The story unfolds in 6 parts, really. It starts with a violent traffic stop, which then triggers a massive cover-up. But then comes the counterattack, an escalation into open warfare, and finally, a single confrontation that brings the whole criminal network crashing down. So picture this. It all begins on a quiet Georgia highway. Commander Alexis Ward is just driving home from her mom's place, probably one of the few quiet moments she gets. But that peace is about to be absolutely shattered, because that road is about to turn into a battlefield. Now, as this officer, Dawson, shoves her up against her own car and holds a crackling taser to her neck, Commander Alexis Ward says this to him. Her voice is calm, it's quiet. She's not pleading, she's stating a fact. And his response? Just pure, smug arrogance. With those 4 little words, he pulls a trigger on a chain of events that nobody, especially not him or his buddies, could have ever seen coming. You see, from the absolute get-go, this was not a legal stop. They followed her, they boxed her in, they were looking for a confrontation. Dawson's very first words to her weren't about speeding or a broken taillight. Nope, it was a racist accusation. The assault wasn't because she was resisting, the assault was the whole point. But the second Dawson tried to use that taser, something switched on. Years of Delta Force training just took over. And in this blur of motion, super fluid, incredibly efficient, and, this is key, non-lethal, she completely neutralized all 3 of them before they even knew what was happening. And this right here, this was their huge, catastrophic miscalculation. They saw a woman, they saw her race, and they just assumed she was an easy victim they could bully. They had absolutely no idea they had just picked a fight with one of the most elite soldiers on the entire planet. So with their officers totally defeated on the side of the road, the system itself kicks into gear. But not for justice, oh no, it mobilized to strike back. Their boss, Lieutenant Briggs, shows up on the scene. And he's not there to de-escalate, he's there to dominate. He actually attacks Alexis himself, swinging a baton. When she just easily sidesteps him, he gets even angrier and immediately shifts gears to damage control, ordering his guys to grab witness phones and lock down the scene. The cover-up was immediate, and it was slick. It was like they'd done this before. Within just a couple of hours, they all filed identical fake reports. The dashcam footage that would have proven she was innocent, whoops, mysteriously wiped. A computer glitch. And then a story gets leaked to the press painting Alexis as the one who went crazy. So they didn't just arrest her. No, they tried to bury her under a mountain of the most serious charges you can imagine, even attempted murder. This had nothing to do with the law. This was a tactic, pure and simple. It was meant to destroy her credibility and scare her into silence before she could ever tell her side of the story. And just like that, the story was set. Leaks from inside the department start framing her as this unstable veteran, suffering from PTSD. They took her years of decorated service to the country and twisted it into a weapon to make her look like a public menace. But here's the thing, Lieutenant Briggs and his corrupt little system had never, ever run into an opponent like Commander Ward. While they were busy building their wall of lies, she was already planning her own counteroffensive. The fight was moving from the roadside to a battle of pure wits and strategy. Before she can even meet with her lawyer, Briggs sends a team to persuade her. 4 deputies with batons try to ambush her in a parking garage. But Alexis just turns their trap completely on its head. She uses the concrete pillars for cover, uses their own sloppy moves against them, and just systematically takes all 4 of them down. And then, she calmly pulls out her phone and documents everything, turning their failed attack into rock-solid evidence for her case. And that evidence she gathered, it was so clean, so undeniable, it brought in the big guns, the Department of Justice. Investigator Daniel Cross shows up, and he sees right away how deep the rot goes. The second his team walked into that police station, you could just feel the panic. Officers were literally shredding files. So what did the feds start to uncover? Well, this was never, ever about a traffic stop. It was a for-profit criminal enterprise. They were systematically targeting black drivers to make fake arrests, all to fill beds in private prisons. And who was at the center of it all? Lieutenant Briggs, getting rich off of kickbacks for every single person he put behind bars. Okay, so the feds are now on the scene. Their whole criminal scheme is about to unravel, and this is where things get really desperate. The subtle stuff is over. Briggs basically declares open war, using every dirty trick in the book to try and crush Alexis. So what does Briggs do? He goes on a media blitz. He actually holds a press conference, twisting her elite military training into some kind of public threat. He calls her a domestic terrorist and has the nerve to demand that the federal agents who were investigating him should be arresting her instead. But while Briggs is busy grandstanding for the cameras, Alexis is playing a completely different game. She goes on her own intel mission. She walks, by herself, into the Lion's Den, the local cop bar, and baits them.
And these guys, drunk and arrogant, they can't help but brag. She gets them on tape, admitting Briggs personally wiped the dashcam footage and, get this, that a local judge was on their payroll.
So when the media smear and the bad intel didn't stop her, they went from character assassination to, well, actual attempted assassination. Two of Briggs's goons try to run her car right off the road in broad daylight, but they were amateurs trying to take on a pro. She records the whole thing, executes a perfect pit maneuver that wrecks their car and leaves them handcuffed to their own vehicle.
So at this point, every single attack has backfired. Every attempt to scare her or get rid of her has just handed her more evidence. Briggs is backed into a corner, and he's only got one desperate move left. One last, all-or-nothing ambush. But first, a huge win in the courtroom. Federal investigators did some digging and, you're not going to believe this? They recovered the backup audio from the officers' own body mics. A judge listened to their own voices, filled with racial slurs, planning the whole attack before they even got out of their cars. It was undeniable. All charges against Alexis were thrown out. But a cornered animal is the most dangerous, right? Briggs, in one last pathetic, cruel move, retaliates by having her mother arrested on fake charges. And that was his last mistake. For Alexis, this changed everything. It was no longer about defense. It was time to go on the offense and set a trap of her own. And this is where she brings her full military training to bear. First, she has her lawyer leak some of the financial documents about the kickback scheme, just enough to cause a panic. Then, she leaks her own location, making it seem like she's alone and vulnerable. The goal? Bait the entire rotten crew into one place at one time. And Briggs, he takes the bait, hook, line, and sinker. He rounds up his 12 most loyal, most violent, most compromised deputies, the guys who had everything to lose if this thing went south. But there was just one commander waiting for them. They all met in this abandoned impound lot. They thought they were the hunters, showing up to finally silence the one person who could bring them all down. They had no idea they were walking right into a perfectly designed kill box. And what happened next in that impound lot was just a masterclass. She used the dark, the rusted-out cars, their complete lack of discipline against them. Moving through the shadows, she systematically and, again, non-lethally dismantled his entire force, one by one. With his whole team down, she finally confronts a terrified Briggs. She disarms him, breaks his arm, and forces him to confess to everything, right there on the spot. And then she drops the bomb. Federal agents are recording everything now. Checkmate. And that right there, that was the final domino. With Briggs confessing on tape and his whole crew caught red-handed, the corrupt house of cards he had built just came tumbling down. And the scale of the victory was just total. This wasn't just about arresting one bad lieutenant. The entire police department was put under federal control. The DA, who was in on it, resigned in disgrace. The crooked judges, under federal investigation. The entire chain of corruption was shattered. The fallout was just massive. Briggs and his top guys are now facing decades in federal prison. The department is being completely rebuilt from the ground up, and millions of dollars in civil settlements are expected for all the other people who are victims of their scheme. And, most importantly, her family was made whole again. Her mother was let out of jail immediately, and all those bogus charges were completely wiped from her record. The system's last cruel power play failed completely. But her fight, it wasn't over. The Justice Department comes to her with this incredible offer. They ask her to take everything she's been through, her tactical skill, her first-hand knowledge of how these systems get corrupted, and lead a brand new national task force. Her new mission? To reform police use of force standards for the entire country. This whole story really leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? What does it actually take to fix a system that's so fundamentally broken? Is it just one person's courage? Is it having undeniable proof? Or is it something more? And maybe the most profound answer doesn't come from the commander, but from her mother, Sarah. When they were finally reunited, she just looked at her daughter and said, "There's a lot of fixing to be done." And that's really it, isn't it? It's a simple, powerful truth. Real change doesn't just come from one single victory. It comes from the hard, constant work of people willing to stand up and do the fixing.